Hey, what's up, fellas? I'm Malicious Female Fan Steve Malicious here today with the IBM ThinkPad A20p. I can only hold this with one hand for so long, so this intro is going to have to be short. But in my mind, one of the best retro laptops you can have if you're a collector of old devices, whether it be those old palmtops or PDAs or old retro laptops, or you just like messing around with old networking stuff, get yourself one of these. We're going to talk about the advantages of the A20p today on this edition of Steve Malicious Tech. Well, right after I get oxygen. And we're back as always. Thank you so much to all the new subscribers, up over 2,590 as of the taping of this video. If you're loving all the new stuff, whether it be the phones, which we'll have plenty of that this week as well, or the retro stuff like this ThinkPad right here, go ahead and give that subscribe button a tussle. It certainly means a lot to me. So the ThinkPad A20p, for my money, the best retro laptop you can have as a collector. We'll talk about a couple of minor things first, and I'll get into the major stuff on why I think for retro collectors, a piece like this is particularly important. Number one, just on laptops in general and how they're different from today's machines, this keyboard is excellent. Perhaps only second to the PowerBooks of the same era, the 3400, the PowerBook 1400. No flex in the board. Nice key travel, excellent feel, a laptop keyboard that you actually would want to type on, which is amazing. You don't get that nowadays on these machines. Of course, you've got the little TrackPoint 2 system. Since it's an IBM ThinkPad, no touchpad on this particular model, even though you have the buttons down here, left and right mouse button, everything. Stereo speakers, excellent display. A display that really holds up over time. The jump from the mid-'80s with those liquid crystals where they barely had twisted crystal LCDs to today, or to 2000, and then from 2000 to today, the screen technology is fantastic. 1400 by 1050p active matrix, 15-inch TFT, just phenomenal. Really good display. And it's great for games. If you have your retro games, you can run your DOS games on here. It's got a 750 megahertz Pentium 3, 384 megabytes of RAM. That is an upgrade on this machine. Personally, it's running Windows 98 2nd edition. It can handle XP, especially with that Pentium 3 running it. Personally, I would probably throw another stick in here, get it up to 512, and then you should be okay. And that gives you some more extended support. And I do mean it is extended support, because even XP isn't supported anymore. But it could give you some newer releases of Firefox, which may help you out a bit. So what can you use this particular one for? Well, the games for sure. If you have all those late 90s CD-ROM games, even the early 2000s, this will run it nice. It has an ATI Rage Pro, a discrete graphics card, which you can imagine. This was quite an expensive laptop back in the day. I think it was around $4,500 or $5,000, but definitely worth it as this falls into the desktop replacement realm. Some other cool stuff that was kind of, while Apple was busy working on technology of putting the fiber optics under their keys to light the keyboard, you just had something very simple on the ThinkPad. So, of course, hopefully this catches it as I span up. You basically hit function, and there you see it popped up. Why have illuminated keys when you could just have a dedicated button, a little LED in there that could illuminate the keyboard for you, the ThinkLight, which I think was really cool. So I'm going to power this down because I'm going to talk about the two things that I think really make this important for retro collectors and why I have one of these. I got this for about $50, I think 4 or 5 years ago. There was a church group that was getting rid of it, and so I was able to pick it up. A lot of these things go for a lot more money now. It's unfortunate with the retro laptops. For some reason, they go for a ton, but that's just the way it is. But still, once in a while, you can get a deal on one of these if you go to eBay and you do buy it now, right? And you sort by new listing. Sometimes you could get people who are just posted stuff. So if you want a retro laptop, you're going to need a lot of ports, and not just new ports. Okay. You're going to need ports that are both legacy and some of the new ones, because that's how you're going to connect to a lot of your old stuff. Those PDAs, those palm tops that are using serial. Remember, the first Palm devices didn't, the dock connector wasn't USB. It was serial. So you needed an older machine like this to get access. So what did we have on the ThinkPad? Well, if you turn to this side, you get the floppy drive, which is incredibly important, especially if you got older laptops. They didn't have CD-ROMs. So you're going to be loading a lot of software onto floppies. That was fine. You had both headphone, microphone, but also line-in ports. You had your IR port, which again, on some of those older Palm tops, IR was one of the ways that you could transmit data on there, which was quite cool. This port was interesting. It's barely even a port, but for 2000, it was, you take this little rubber flap off, and it's a proprietary port. ThinkPad had it, IBM, for a webcam, an early 2000s webcam. You can imagine that 144p looking fantastic on the webcam. All right, so you turn around here, you've got S-Video in and out, which is great. DVD-ROM drive, your PCMCIA slots there. And then around the back, you get the meat of it. Parallel port for your printer. Then you had both a 56K modem, 10 base 100 Ethernet. You had your 9-pin serial here, VGA, USB, your PS2 port for your mouse, and power. But on the off chance that this guy wasn't chunky enough, because it's pretty chunky, but if you wanted it to be chunkier than that, well, there was an option for you. You could make this a real desktop replacement and get one of these guys that came with it. You had the port replicator, the dock, which then would give you another, the stuff that it blocked, okay, which is fine, VGA. You had a slot here. You could add an additional external floppy drive, 2 PS2 ports, so you could have the keyboard and the mouse, so you didn't have to use the laptop keyboard. You had the S-Video in again, another USB, FireWire for your digital cameras back in the day, and also, if you want to get super fancy, early port for digital video out. If you had one of those digital monitors, I think this is DVI-A, not quite sure, but it's an early digital video standard that you could have there. Just really cool. So if you had whatever you had an older PowerBook, you had an older laptop, this got Ethernet. Listen, those laptops, if you're a collector from the mid-90s, I know people are more versed in a lot of this stuff than I am. But a lot of times, the Ethernet adapters that you need to buy for those, the wireless cards, whatever it happens to be, is more than you paid for the laptop. So instead, you could have one guy like this that you could go online. Listen, it's a struggle with some of the browsers, I understand. You put Opera on here, you put Pale Moon on here, and you guess and test which ones work. The good thing is, a lot of times with those older software sites, for Windows CE, for Palm and stuff like that, they understand the clientele that's going to be going to their site. So they're not overly fancy. They're ones that can run on older hardware, which is quite nice that they do that. They take that into consideration. So an older browser will get you through just fine, enough to download your 1 megabyte, not even 1 megabyte, your kilobyte files for some of those older machines. So you could get drivers that are lost. A lot of times, if you're rebuilding older machines from the 90s, it's incredibly hard to get drivers back on there, or find drivers. You could put them on the floppy from here. You could download them, transfer them over. You have USB if you need to connect machines. There's so many things that you could do, and it's very versatile. So you can have a situation where you're not stuck with some older hardware that you can't get anything on because you just don't have the standards. A lot of the stuff was proprietary back then. Connectors, wireless cards, Ethernet cards, trying to get stuff connected. Some of the older stuff. I had one, a PowerBook. I think it was a PowerBook 540C, where the connector, the Ethernet thing, needed its own power, dip switches, all the rest of it. Then I needed the right drivers for, or not drivers for the Mac, but I needed the right extensions for it. What a mess. You get something like this, you move over software on floppies that you need, it's just fine. The other thing that makes this an important machine, and I think the best machine for retro collectors, is durability. What's the point of having a machine like this and having something that you're going to need that needs to be older if it doesn't last? These IBM ThinkPads would pretty much make it through any sort of natural disaster you could think of. They are built well. You got that rugged design. You got that textured material that they use, that like kind of rubberized, not really material on the top all around. It's before Lenovo took over, so these things were built like battle tanks, and they should be, because for the $5,000 you were paying, but I paid 1% of that. So we get all the enjoyment of that without that. But you get the nice keyboard, durable design. It lasts. It just works. Easy to work on because of all the space. It's just really nice to have something like this. But a lot of this, the older ones were a little cheap, plastic, not quality parts. And if they break apart and you can't use them 20 years down the line, what good is it? So this one has made it with no problems. I really have, I can have this sitting for 6 months, a year, not an issue. In fact, I just pulled it out, was playing around with it, went back on, plugged my Ethernet line right in here, connected, no issues, got online, was on IRC. Speaking to somebody, if you were a Star Wars fan back in the day, Coalition of Galactic Fleets on IRC, Saturday nights, doing a little Star Wars gaming, a little X-Wing. You wish you were that cool. Just saying. You wish you were that cool. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite retro laptops are, retro devices. Stuff that you use to connect and sync up your palms, your palmtops, your Windows CE devices, older laptops that you may have that you work on, that what you use to kind of get them connected. And listen, I don't get that, like I said, I don't get super technical with a lot of the stuff. Okay, I'm not sitting there with all the some of the stuff that for network compatibility back in the day would melt your brain. And I'm not interested in all that. So I get myself one of these, put stuff on floppies, and then I'm good to go. But if you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.